here's the thing. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then Christianity has nothing to offer. It's worthless, and everyone who believes the gospel is a blasphemer. To be a Christian is to embrace some pretty challenging beliefs. And I'm not just talking about the nature of God or that Jesus is both human and divine. There's one belief that we hold to that is especially difficult, but upon which our entire faith stands or falls. And that's the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. Now, a little bit of background here. The belief in a resurrection from the dead for God's people is one that developed over time as God gradually revealed it through the Old Testament. By the time of Jesus, it was generally accepted that on the day of the Lord, the dead would rise, some to everlasting life and others to everlasting judgment. But when it came to the Messiah, the long-awaited rescuer of God's people, the idea that he would have to die to rescue his people was unheard of. The Messiah, after all, was a king, the son of David, who would lead them to victory. And so when the Messiah actually showed up, they didn't recognize him. He more closely resembled the suffering servant of Isaiah 53 than a conquering king. He was a humble man about whom there was seemingly nothing special, at least as far as outward appearances were concerned. And he kept talking about how he was going to be handed over to the Gentiles, that he would be mocked and mistreated and spat upon, that they would flog him severely and then they would kill him. But death wouldn't be the end. Instead, he said, on the third day he will rise again. Now, Jesus' followers didn't understand what he was talking about, and even the teachers of the law, those who were supposed to be the experts in the scriptures, didn't seem to get it either. But this is what happened during the Passover all those centuries ago. Jesus was arrested. He was beaten and mocked. He was crucified, and he was dead, and his tomb was sealed. But on the first day of the week following his death, the third day, the tomb was empty. And this is what we celebrate at Easter, because on Easter morning, Jesus' body was gone, and a group of women, Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome, were the first to find the tomb empty. And angels spoke to them asking, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" before giving them this command to go and tell Jesus' disciples. And tell them they did. And in fact, Mary Magdalene was likely the very first person to see the risen Jesus alive in the flesh. But she wasn't alone in seeing him. Hundreds more saw Jesus after his resurrection, and many of them were still alive when Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, roughly 30 years after the events of that day. But even so, that didn't stop alternate explanations for the empty tomb from springing up. Perhaps Jesus' disciples, this ragtag group of fishermen and social outcasts, had overpowered the trained guards who stood watching over the tomb. Maybe people were so overcome by grief that they had a mass hallucination, something that defies the extremely private nature of hallucinations. Or maybe Jesus wasn't really dead, but only very badly injured. Despite all of these alternatives that stretch credulity to the breaking point, they still circulate today. But what if the best explanation is the simplest, that Jesus really did rise from the dead? Because here's the thing, if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then Christianity has nothing to offer. It's worthless, and everyone who believes the gospel is a blasphemer. And if you think I'm overstating that, that's actually what the Bible itself says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 14 through 19. And the reason that Paul was so emphatic on this point is that he and the other apostles knew that Jesus' death was the atoning sacrifice needed to pay for our sin. And more than that, that his resurrection was the proof that Jesus had actually done this, that Jesus saves those who come to God through him because he is alive, as Hebrews 7:25 says. So is this hard to believe? Absolutely. It's a miracle, after all, the power of God breaking into the world in a profound way. But as you explore this truth for yourself, I hope that you will see how important it is. Because Jesus is alive, sin no longer has the last word. Because Jesus is alive, death has no sting. And because Jesus is alive, all who believe are alive in him.